It is 13 minutes past 11. Good morning. Now, there's been no bigger issue than the migrant crisis in recent years. It's gone on for almost as long as Syria's civil war, and it's changed the political and, of course, the demographic landscape. But have we become desensitised to the suffering of these people when we hear them being called migrants in the first place? It took a while, didn't it, for people to even start using the word refugee, when, for many of them, that's exactly what they were. And the BBC News website now, when doing stories related to this, makes sure it gives an explanation of why it's saying migrant and refugee. And it had to. Our next guests take a up-close and very personal look at the migrant crisis. We're inside Libya, where the corrupt regimes use the crisis to extort money from the families of migrants, many of whom have money and have come from professions in their home countries. Stuart Gatt produced the film, which tells the story of a man and his pregnant wife who are trying to get to Europe. He produced the film looking exactly at the human cost of this story. The short film is called The Dead Sea. It follows a man and his pregnant wife who attempt to reach Europe by boat. And I'm joined by Joan Iyiola, who plays the role of the wife, and Stuart Gatt himself. Welcome to the show, Joan and Stuart.
Thank you, Nihal.
Hi.
Hi. Stuart, it seems like a stupid question to say why, because, of course, there's not a day goes by when we are not bombarded with images of this human misery that we see unfolding around us. But I guess it's a difficult story to tell in a unique way, because how do you fictionalise something and make it as powerful as the images that are just there in real time?
Yeah.
And that's a challenge.
It is. It's also a decision as a filmmaker. There's always this point where you say, well, is a documentary more fitting for this than fictionalising something? And obviously, I'm not really a documentary filmmaker, and I would never try and encroach on that documentary ground. The reality is what we're showing in the film can't be shown on a documentary.
No.
You're never going to get the documentary
access,
camera team into the reality of these Libyan detention centres, nor on the boat with the refugees. So at that point, I think as a filmmaker, there's license to step in and it's really the fictionalising. I try to be as honest to the accounts that I've read as possible, and not to take any bias or really put any of my own creative influence on it, and just be as honest to the reality as possible. That's all you can really do if you're not going to make a documentary.
While watching this, Joan, the thing that struck me is just how quickly, when put in positions of domination, we exploit that. And when I see this, I always wonder, am I a good enough person?
Yeah.
You know, if you were put in that situation where you could just have absolute domination over another human being, you'd like to think that our moral compass would say, well, we wouldn't do the things that we see done in this film.
Yeah, exactly that. I remember doing a psychology at A-level and studying about Zimbardo and the prison study, where you've kind of got two groups that go in and one gets given the role of a prisoner, the other one gets given the role of the guards, and how quickly we adapt to taking on those roles, and the violence that we're all capable of because somebody has said, you are in the position of power.
Yes,
and that's
power.
Unchecked power.
Yeah. And
that's kind of what it becomes about. And it's a terrifying thought. You know, some of these people are following orders, but in the film, as you see, you've got black Africans that actually are the ones that are seen as a disadvantage to the guards in the film. So you've got that sort of visual tension as well that actually can up that power perhaps that's being used.
Because, of course, you see in this that the Libyan guards, they enjoy it. I mean, this isn't just them being told what to do. I don't think anyone in there could really put their hands up and say, I was just following orders, sir. They enjoy this domination over each other. And Stuart, at the heart of this, there are some very difficult moral questions that we all have to answer about ourselves. Our reaction to this crisis, our domination of other human beings, perhaps even, as I pointed out in the intro, how desensitised perhaps we're becoming to it.
Yeah, it is. It's a scary thought. I think that there's mechanisms that have allowed us to get to that point. I don't think it's just inherent. So the fact we're desensitised is being done with terms like migrants and inherent racism that we have towards certain peoples, and say, oh, they're here just to try and, turn up in England because they love it so much and not really know the reality. The power thing is something different. Yeah, I think fundamentally, that's what I've always argued, that I think humans shouldn't really have a system with any power, because there's never been an example where people haven't exploited power, even on the most basic level. And the other thing as well with this whole Libyan situation as well, the guards, like if we look across history, how murderous some people can become when they're given some power, but there's also some doctrine behind it. And I think in Libya there's this idea that black Africans from Libya, so from sub-Saharan Africa, because Libya was a place that was very multicultural. So you had people from the Maghreb, and then you had a lot of Nigerians, Ghanaians, Senegalese, who were there as workers or highly educated, working at high levels. And they were seen post-Gaddafi's downfall as a link to his regime. So a lot of the hatred towards Gaddafi, and was then aimed at black Africans.
That's right, yeah.
So they see them as the children of Gaddafi.
Right.
But the other part of it is also another element which is played on slightly is that in North Africa, even though they're African, just as African as any Nigerian or Ghanaian or someone from South Africa, they'll refer to black Africans as Abd or Abid, which means slave, which is a derogatory term for black people, because they identify themselves as Arab, even though they're from Africa. So there's this identity crisis amongst them, identifying themselves as Arab and seeing themselves not as African. And there's another element to it that adds to it for those guards as well. So there's more of the hatred towards them as black Africans and the link to Gaddafi. So when you've got these things going around in your head, it's a lot easier to justify these horrendous actions. And I think that's part of what creates that psyche for those guards.
Joan, it must be incredibly difficult. And the woman that you play is stronger in many ways than the male her husband.
Yeah.
And he is so thoroughly emasculated by that process, isn't it? Because not only is it enough just to imprison him, but they have to take away one of the very primal things us men have, which is the protection of our women.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's chilling. I mean, how difficult was it to film?
I mean, we talk about this. I mean, it came up a lot last night at the screening as well, is that how do you get something like this together? And I have to say it had to be down to Stuart and the team on creating that atmosphere. When you read a script about something like this, you know what's required. You know the lengths that you might have to go to in order to tell this story well and to tell it right. And the atmosphere that was created by Stuart and the crew, the cast, was a matter of trust. Like, it was established very, very quickly. We were filming for 4 days. And on day one, knowing the scenes that were coming, you had to be in an environment where you felt safe.
Yeah. Because
this was about as vulnerable as it was going to get. In terms of taking on a part like Olu, she represents a lot of women I know and I've grown up with. She's sort of, for me, I always think women of that kind are social navigators. So they have been put into many situations, not necessarily as extreme as we explore in the film, but they understand the nature of adopting a different form of language to fit the environment that they're in. So what you see with Emmanuel is that he sees himself as an intelligent, educated, upstanding citizen. So he enters in that environment and, I mean, I'm talking for Chope here, but he enters into that environment and he feels that language will get him by. Because it's always got him by. Yeah. I think she sees quite quickly that language is not going to work. So the way that she navigates herself around this detention centre is, how do I keep me and Emmanuel together through all of this?
Yeah. I mean, it's navigation, but it's actually just survival, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Really reading the fact that in order to stand up to these people, in fact, standing up to them is fruitless. I mean, nothing is going to come from that.
Yeah.
Is it? It's actually everything to survive.
Yeah.
And showing, fascinatingly, of course, that how quickly your social status can be just dismantled.
That's really the crazy thing. And I think that when we were talking about Emmanuel and Olu's characters, and, you know, you're going from a really high position in Libya, working, having a great life, great work, great job, and then it's suddenly completely turned on its head. And that reality is a lot of the shock factor that hits Emmanuel. because we talked about how Olu's character would have wanted them to go. Emmanuel probably wanted to hold on, thinking things was, at some point go back to normal. And it must be harrowing, because that's the thing that people don't know, and it's a big part of why people are desensitized. A lot of the black people coming from Libya were Libyans, in the same way that we're British, but we're from Asia and Africa. But we're still British. If the BNP suddenly turned up and, was ruling England and suddenly we had to go, we're still British and they're still Libyans, no matter what colour they are, where they originally come from. And people don't know that this is a place that we've invaded and created this situation. Libya's not like that by accident. So as British people, we have to understand the responsibility we have. This is a place that we've bombed and create this situation to then turn those people back, send them back to Libya, where this is happening to them, is like a double insult. So people need to know that, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this film, is Libya's not like that by accident, and we have to know what's actually going on there, because we don't know.
And we're so willing to remove the element of class from the subject matter. Like it's so easy for us to go, these people are obviously of a lower socioeconomic background to the rest of us, and that's why they're in this situation. We remove that, and so as a result, what this film I think does, and what Stuart is trying to create here, is something that shows the universality of this situation and how it can actually happen to any of us. And it honestly takes, as Stuart's saying, a change of power. To suddenly make our position that we think we've earned and is our right reduced to nothing.
Because as you point out, by the time you've got out the country, or you're willing to pay smugglers, you have to be middle class in order to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Because you're paying thousands of dollars, aren't you, to get across? And then, of course, that's used against you on the other side. They say, well, why didn't you use that money better rather than paying criminals? You could have gone just across the side of the border and paid rent somewhere rather than paying criminals, yada, yada, yada. So either way, you're kind of caught.
Yeah, but the latter isn't reality anyway. Black people are literally just snatched off the street in Libya. By virtue of their blackness, they're isolated. So you can't just go. But some people in these detention centres, they just want to go back to the country they came from.
Yeah, that's right.
They can't even get there.
Yeah.
So it's like a catch-22.
I just want to go home.
Yeah, they just want to go. And they can't do it. They just get snatched, put back in a detention centre. It's not as easy as just going, okay, guys, look, let's call it quits. I'm going to get on a plane back to Nigeria. It's not as easy as that.
Very, very scary. It's 25 minutes past 11. You're listening to Nihal on the BBC Asian Network. And considering we're talking about the themes of the day, the topicality of the world that we live in, I can't think of a better track to play now than one by Riz Ahmed, the actor and, of course, rapper. And this is from his mixtape. It's called Englistan, the mixtape. And this is the title track from it, a former track of the week of mine here on the BBC Asian Network. Here's Riz MC with Englistan. It's 11:30 and I am here with Stuart Gatt, who's produced a short film called The Dead Sea. Also Joan Iyiola, who is one of the lead actors in the short film. Stuart, where can people see it? I mean, is it going to be just doing the rounds of film festivals?
At the moment, we're waiting for it to premiere at festival, and at that point, if people keep up to date with the Twitter at 6if, so at 6 THIF, they're able to keep up where it's screening, because it will be touring, and then it will be made available for everyone to see. But we're trying to make sure it's seen as much as possible, so we'll hold as many events and screenings as possible to make sure it gets out there.
Joan, did any of this story surprise you, in the sense that you'd read the script when you first read it and said, surely people can't be that cruel to each other? Because it's actually profoundly depressing if you do read that script and go, well, actually, the people are.
I think it's the level of the consistent aggression that surprised me. Right. In terms of, you can be in that detention centre and this can be happening to you as frequently as those guards decide. That, when you kind of look into the human psyche and are aware of, these are people that weren't made guards initially and have become guards and have now, this is routine. This is like their exercise for the day. That surprised me, for sure.
Right, okay. Sure. So how you make torture, how you make oppression just a normal diary entry. It's like going to the gym. Yeah. Or having a meeting.
That's why
casual violence.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I put that Ahmed character in there, the young guard, because I didn't want people to think I was just showing Libyans as just inherent torturers.
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to show that this is how you become like this. You know, you can be a young guy without money, wanting to take up a job where you're, you know, mopping the floors of a detention centre and slowly dragged into something you're not comfortable with. And through being hardened and witnessing it on a daily basis, soon it becomes second nature. The one thing I would say, though, you know, the film is difficult to watch. And
no doubt it's difficult to watch.
Yeah. And
I found it really difficult to watch yesterday.
Yeah, it's difficult to watch, but believe it or not, the stuff that I've included in this film is mild compared to the stuff I've read from human rights groups that have done reports on these places. When I say mild, I mean mild. Some of the stuff that I read, it was unbelievable. You just wouldn't believe that stuff goes on. So as harrowing as the stuff is...
You toned that down.
That is and I say massively toned down. The stuff that I've read, you just wouldn't believe. It's harrowing to read. Really harrowing.
You know, this is torture. This is rape. This is all in there. And that's the toned down
version. Toned down version. Believe it or not. And this is what people are going... And I always say this to people when they watch a film, they always come out feeling jaded. And they're like, oh, that was really difficult to watch. I always say, imagine the people that are going through this on a daily basis.
No.
And this is mild compared to what we've just seen. It's harrowing. The thing to remember is that this is European governments that are funding these detention centres, because this is part of our deterrent policy is we'll fund detention centres. So your job in Libya is to round up any refugees or migrants that are trying to get to Europe and keep them in there, and it stops them from getting on the water in the first place. So we're paying for these places that are committing these human rights abuses. This is something we have to be, again, responsible for and aware of, and that's why people seeing this film and understanding the details are important to understand our responsibility. It's not a Libyan story. It's a British and European story, something we're responsible for. We have a part in everything that we see on that screen.
And there is no or little oversight from our governments, Western European governments, as to the treatment that people are going through in these detention centres, clearly. So
Italian government predominantly are the ones that fund it. It's understood that other European governments fund it, even covertly, but Italian government is known that they fund it. And apparently you read stuff where... I've seen a couple of documentaries, actually, where some of the prisoners will say what will happen is one day the prison will quickly be tidied up, and then some Italian officials walk through, inspect it, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that there's so much evidence that shows what's been going on, all the testimony from the people that make it over. The question is that they obviously don't take it that seriously, and not enough to shut them down, because I think they know that if they did, then suddenly they'd have all these people coming to Europe, and that's what they don't want. I think that not having those people coming to Europe is way more important than their livelihood, obviously.
It's a priority.
And human rights.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a priority.
I don't know how we get over this, because, of course, there's so much pain going on in the world, because the Libyans are the least issue. Our eyes are looking towards Syria, where there is just carnage on a daily basis, and ignoring the fact, of course, that Libya is essentially a failed state now, isn't it?
That's right.
Run by various different groups who have no love for each other, and there seems to be no real attempt by the international community to successfully broker any kind of peace between these warring tribes. And in, of course, the midst of all that, chaos reigns supreme.
Of course, that's it.
Lack of oversight. Do you think that a film such as this has the power to help change a situation? I guess you wouldn't do it if you thought that it was a useless undertaking, but who do you think you can influence by making a film like this? Because there is a danger, of course, you're just preaching to the converted.
Well, I mean, the thing is the same. I think that it can change the same people who would make their minds up by watching media reports that, denounce them as migrants and try to play down the situations they're coming from. If people can be swayed by that, then there's every reason why they can be swayed with something that shows the reality. I think that's all you can do really as a filmmaker, is show the reality and try and get it seen by as many people as possible, create as many discussions as possible, and then hopefully people are intelligent. It's just that they were given misinformation. That's part of the big issue. So that was one of the big reasons why I made this film. I wasn't going to make another short film. It's only when I saw this stuff in the media and I was like, this is just insidious, the way that they're being described. It's unbelievable. And especially towards black refugees, because people only really started caring when that Syrian baby washed up. Syrians are like some of the whitest looking Asians. They're not white, but they're some of the whitest looking Asians. They saw that Syrian
Arabs,
baby. Yeah. Saw that white baby, and people just, that was the turning point in terms of the media narrative.
Are you suggesting that if that was a black baby, that there would have been less focus put on?
There's been loads of pictures of black babies. There's never been any. The evidence is already, that speaks for itself. There's been loads of footage and visuals of black babies. No one cares. Black bodies washed up for ages.
Yes, no, it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
So that's not my opinion. That's just a fact. There's a known racial divide in the way this whole thing is seen. Anyway, some of the smugglers who are coming from, so some people will come from Syria and they'll go via try and get into Turkey and then across to Greece. Some have been going via Libya, because at one point that was like the main convergence point to launch to Europe. And the smugglers would say to the people they were smuggling, you've got a better chance of survival. Get all the black people in the hull of the boat, ram all the black people on the bottom, keep the Syrians at the top, because you've got more chance of being rescued by a European ship. Because they can just look, I say, okay, look, there's a lot of, Syrian-looking people. And this is nothing against Syrians, obviously. They're going through a terrible situation, but this is a reality that exists.
So because they're fairer skinned, they'd have more chance of being rescued than if you were to have black Africans.
According to all the evidence, that's exactly what's happening.
It is hard to find any source of optimism in this. Joan, can you find any? I'll put you on the spot with this one to give Stuart enough time to think about his answer.
I think that the awareness that Stuart is hoping to produce in this, in sort of showing a film like this, and through the medium of film, means that for me as an actress, if we can make our world smaller, then our human rights and our opinion of that globally will improve. Because I think so much of it is that we think this is other. We think this is pushed so far away, so it's not our problem. So I think what happens with this film is that you bring it closer in and you realise on just a humanity level how common this is and how likely this could be for us all. Means that our opinion of it could change. And I think that's where the hope comes from it. The more aware of it, the more investigation we're doing about it, the more... That's why art is a beautiful thing for me. The more mediums that can showcase or highlight this situation, then the better as humans we can deal with it.
A source for hope indeed. Stuart, I'll give you a little bit more time to see where your optimism comes from after we play a couple of tracks here. It's now coming up to 20 to 12. You listen to Nihal, the BBC Asia Network. We're talking about the short film The Dead Sea here on the BBC Asia Network. Just very quickly, Stuart, where can people go and just get a clip of the trailer? The
trailer's online, so if they search The Dead Sea or search a Dead Sea trailer, you'll be able to see the trailer on there.
Cool. Let's give you some time with some music for you to go and check out that trailer online. It is 47 minutes past 11. You're listening to Nihal on the BBC Asian Network, and I'm joined by the film producer Stuart Gatt, also the actor Joan Iyiola, to talk about The Dead Sea, a short film that deals with African Libyans caught in this terrible Libyan detention centre, which, as Stuart pointed out, is funded by, or part funded certainly by, European governments, certainly the Italian government, in order to stop refugees getting to Europe. So we'll pay for a detention centre. Of course, these people will be treated beautifully. They'll be given cups of tea, books, maybe a daily massage. You can use the gym and the swimming pool and the library if they wish. And then, of course, they'll be told, look, stay here, chaps. I mean, look, what a great life you're having here. Why would you possibly want to go to Italy? It's rubbish. But the reality, if you see The Dead Sea, is cruelty, torture, oppression, domination, and just about the vilest human instincts brought to the fore and enacted upon people who are at their most vulnerable. It really is a very difficult watch. A powerful one, brilliantly acted by Joan and the rest of the cast. You've visited the Calais jungle, is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
That was, again, very, very difficult. Very difficult. It's funny, it was my brother's idea, actually. It was New Year's Eve he wanted to go, so we spent New Year's there. And I was kind of hesitant about it because A lot of
Well, yeah, for New Year's Eve. Yeah, most people are not thinking about hanging around in a Calais jungle on New Year's Eve. So, yeah, that's the first reason why I was hesitant, I can imagine.
No, that
Want to go raving or go to the Calais jungle?
That part of it, believe it or not, was the easy bit.
Right, okay.
It was more because I was saying, look, we got to be careful because there's this tendency amongst people coming from Europe. They think they can just walk into Asia and Africa and help, and I'm here to help, and here, what can I do? And I didn't feel I had a right as Europeans to just walk into their home and say, well, because I'm from Europe, I have a right to just walk in here. But then my brother said to me, look, that's our brothers there. They're Asian, they're African. Let's go and connect with them on that level and nothing else. And he was absolutely right. And it was an amazing experience. I just went there very humbly and spoke to as many people as I could. It was a very, very, very difficult thing to experience, seeing young kids and mothers and fathers just in this just squalid conditions. The big thing that hit me, I always say to people from that experience is, I grew up in Wood Green, and there's like a triangle of Asian, African.
I hope no estate agents from Wood Green are listening. I hope you're not going to compare it to the Calais jungle.
No. I mean it in the best way, you know. And I grew up in an Asian, black, and that Kurdish, Turkish area.
Welcome to London.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in that area, it was like a hub, and everyone was one community. And I was walking around the jungle, and I was like, man, I'm seeing all these young guys and women. What is the difference between them and the people and me and the people I grew up with, except a technicality, a passport? What difference is it? How ridiculous is it? Something as simple as that. And I understand we have borders and we have some quotas and so on and so forth, but these people are living in conditions that we would never survive in, and they're just trying to survive. And the enduring spirit, human spirit they have, they've made shops, they've made community centres, they've made shisha bars. They've tried to make the best of the situation they have. People don't just give up. And that's the thing that you really see, is these people are just striving to have a better life for themselves, and they're trying to make the best of what they have there. And it is just awful conditions, and it's embarrassing that that's just a stone's throw from England.
How easy is it to get there?
You just go. I mean, we spent the first night with a charity, and we were cooking all night because there's some charities that will deliver food to the jungle. So me and my brother spent all night cooking, and then you can just walk in there.
So you can just drive. You drive on the Eurostar.
Yeah, it's almost like so you can get on the Eurostar. We got ferry, and it's right by the port in Calais.
And you can just drive in.
You drive it. You can't drive. You kind of. It looks like almost like a lay-by on a motorway, and they've just turned that whole area into like this shanty town, effectively. But you can just walk through. It's just very difficult, very, very difficult.
And did you feel scared at any point? Nervous?
No,
intimidated?
No, come on. That's my people's there. Like, I don't see myself as different from them. Not at all. I walked in there and, I mean, most people actually, when I was with me, especially with my brother who looks a lot more Asian than I do, they all thought that we were part of the group anyway.
Right.
We had a lot of European people come to us going, would you like some food? And they were like, no, we're here to see it as well. So we just... And
quite often we're given the impression that it's all young men.
So the way that it's separated, they have got the women in a separate space, and the jungle, or the so-called jungle. I mean, it's kind of a derogatory term they don't like, actually. A lot of people call it the forum, but
the forum.
So that's what that's what they're trying to rename it. So the men are in the sort of more squalid part, and they've got a space where they keep the women in like these kind of warehouses, so they're always indoors.
And their children as well.
Yeah, but you see loads of children playing because a lot of children are there just with their dads. Some children are there alone.
Yes, I know. And they say 10,000 have gone missing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And our government, of course, recently refused to take in.
Of course.
3,000.
Absolutely, yeah, to our credit, of course. It's disgusting. And when you go there and you see the way these kids are, I mean, it's crazy. You've got these little... I mean, even something as simple as a child's innocence, the way they're playing, and they're, like a child plays with the same enthusiasm now where they are. It's very difficult to watch these kids playing in these conditions, and they don't know, that how much of a better situation they could be in. And it's not their fault. It's like someone wrote brilliantly that we play the birth lottery. We were born in the UK, we have this life. They are born there. They can't help that. This is something that's important to remember, especially when we've had a part as Europeans in the situations that they find themselves in. It's not an accident that the so-called Middle East, Western Asia is in these war zones, places we've attacked, and we have to understand that we've created a lot of the situations these people find themselves in. We can't just sit here as ambivalent observers. We have to take some responsibility.
Joan, would you consider yourself an activist? Is it something that you've always been interested in that goes alongside your acting work?
I think...
Or do you naturally gravitate towards roles that have a political dimension to them?
I think when I look back on my career thus far, yeah, I think I absolutely have. I don't really know any other way to be. And I always talk about, I studied law at university. So human rights is sort of part and parcel of what I've grown up with.
Right. Okay.
Parents that are immigrants, you know, and coming to the UK and making a success for themselves is always something that has been held quite dear to me. And I guess that I just always think I'm black and I'm a woman. So if I am not some form of an activist, it's inherent, you know. If I'm not fighting for one thing, I'm fighting for the other, or I'm fighting for both, or I'm fighting for something that isn't associated with me. So I think whenever you are of a demographic which has suffered something, I don't know, some people aren't, but I feel a real drive. And I really do believe in the art that I can do that can shed a light on some of that. And I think we should just always be striving for better. So, and if it's able to be achieved in this medium, then that's what I will keep pushing towards. But I think the roles that come my way, I mean, I do comedy. I do like comedy sometimes, because I think that's important to balance it out and get perspective on it. But no, the work that I do tends to be something where you are required as an actor to dig deep and explore. And you learn so much about yourself in that process, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. Stuart, just give us again another reminder of where people can see the trailer for this, certainly, so people can go online, find out more about the short film, The Dead Sea.
So the best thing they can do is just Google The Dead Sea trailer, or they can Google The Dead Sea Stuart Gatt, and it will pop up there on Vimeo. There'll be a Vimeo link for it.
Brilliant. Like I said on a number of occasions already, it's certainly not an easy watch. It is not designed to be. It is designed to make sure that we dig deeper into what's going on in the world and don't just accept one narrative. Stuart and Joan, thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us about The Dead Sea here on the BBC Asian Network.